Hey guys, it's Aaron, your personal coach. Thanks so much for joining me. Whether you're live or watching the replay, I've got some great information I want to share you today on food preparation, right? It's one of the biggest downfalls I think I find with people I've been coaching for a long time now is they don't have time. Now, this is obviously a bit of a bullshit excuse that we tell ourselves that we don't have time. We don't have time for food prep, etc. But I suppose the objective for today is going to be just to open up your mind, just to get you thinking outside the square and what you need to exactly do to create, obviously, food preparation, whether it's going to be on a daily basis, a weekly basis, etc. So thanks so much for joining me. If you've just joined, please make sure that you've got your sound on mute. That would be great. Thank you so much. Cool. So let's move on. Let's see if we can get this moving forward. Okay, why? Bear with me for a sec. Okay, so the basics first. I always start every presentation off with the foundation principles. Foundation principles are 6 steps to optimal health, right? Motivation is the first one. So like goal setting. So I want you to go back and think about what your goal is. Because if you don't have a goal, right, like food preparation or nutrition is not going to be a priority. So we always need to make sure we understand like what our goal is. Instead of jumping the gun and going and trying to get that end result, we need to go through those foundation principles to make sure that we've got some motivation to keep consistency. Step number 2 is always breathing, right? So this is a really important thing. Most people, I suppose, miss out on because they don't breathe correctly, right? If you're not breathing correctly through the diaphragm, this creates stress on the body. And obviously it can start to lead to a lot of things, especially if we're talking about, I suppose, like nutrition and food preparation, right? Think of the diaphragm as a pump, right? And that stomach a pond. If that pump isn't pumping properly, right, that pond goes stagnant, storing toxins and stuff like that as well. So breathing is a really important part of getting that like digestion, right, like moving through the body. So if we're not breathing correctly, right, it's a big part of the foundation principle, and it can start to hinder all the other things that we're trying to work towards. Example, today we're talking about food preparation, right? Like hydration as well. It's a massive thing because if we're not drinking enough like water, we get dehydrated. And if we're like dehydrated, we want to eat more foods, right? So obviously drinking approximately 2 to 3 liters of good quality like water a day is absolutely essential. Sleeping, right? So we must be sleeping or working towards sleeping 10 to 6. Our circadian cycles is another big thing. If we're talking about like nutrition and food prep, right? If we're not sleeping correctly, we're going to obviously go outside our nutrition plan or what we've planned to eat that day, right? So we're going to want some more sugars or more fats or more bad foods. So it is important to make sure we're sleeping 10 to 6. And like nutrition, of course, today we're talking about food prep. But if I can give you any tips or advice on like nutrition, obviously in 20 seconds, it's going to be like metabolic typing. Eat to your like metabolic type. And if you've been on the coaching program, you know what your metabolic type is. If you don't, I've got a quick test that you can do. Just send me a message and I can send that form to you. So like metabolic typing is important because if you're not eating the right amount of macronutrients, right, that's going to cause a stress on the body and cause us to go outside our nutrition plan. It's not going to keep a consistency, right? Any result that we are looking for, we need consistency. And exercise, of course, like when we come in talking about food prep, it's going to be like really important that we can get our timing right of our exercise, our nutrition. So like food prep is an important part of that as well. So like I said, I want to get you guys thinking outside the square today in regard to food preparation, because if like most people think about food preparation, they're thinking about what am I going to prepare and put in the fridge or the freezer for the next like 5 to 7 days, right? So yes, what I want to talk about like here is why the 5 to 7 day food prep is dead, right? A lot of people, it comes from more a bodybuilding, okay, like background, where people prep their meals for the whole week and they put it in the fridge or the freezer and they pull it out. Now, for me, if you look at the picture I've got on the screen here, canned foods, right? Canned foods, you've got a lot of preservatives. You've got a lot of food that has been stored in the preservatives. So it's denatured foods, right? So what I want to do today is just educate you on a few things in regard to what you need to do in regard to eating fresh is best. So I want to share my screen. If any of you guys did or didn't know, I've got a background in exercise and nutrition science. So that means, okay, just bear with me for a sec, guys. So that means a lot of research. So anything that I'm going to teach you guys is going to be evidence based. So where am I going with this? Bear with me for a sec, sorry. This is where I'm going. Right here. Okay, let me bring my screen back, sorry. All right, so you guys can see my screen again, I'm presuming. So if we're talking about, I did a bit of research on, it's this one. Changes of vitamin C concentration in the process of chain of canned beans, canned green beans. So what this is pretty much saying is that the vitamin C content in canned beans, it decreased by 80%, right? So you've lost 80% of your vitamin C through canned green beans. Right? A lot of people think, oh yeah, I eat my veggies. So I just wanted to give you guys some evidence that the facts show that anything that is canned, anything that is frozen, you're losing nutrition. Okay, vitamin C is only one vitamin in that can of green beans. But obviously to do all the research on all the other vitamins is going to take time as well. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick example of obviously the loss. You can see here, yeah, more than 80% vitamin C disappears during canning of green beans, right? And this is a study, this is a scholarly source by these guys here, Ridgix, Clements, George, Stefan, Albert, Ronald, etc. So obviously the facts show that the vitamins are going to lower in anything like that. Something else I wanted to show you guys in regard to this as well, the preservatives. Now, so this was a really good one. That's not it. That was the cooking, or was it, sorry? Okay, I'll go into this one. So this is another one, another study that was done on brown rice. So this talks a lot about the milling. So what that is when they process brown rice, so what happens, they take the top layer off of that, right? And that top layer consists of a lot of your branch chain amino acids, right? A lot of your, a lot of your amino acids. So when that rice is stripped of that amino acid, it's not as beneficial. So we need to be careful of what foods we're purchasing as well in the shops. Now, my rice that I buy, I've just bought a couple packets that are pretty much straight from the farm. So it hasn't gone through that process of taking that top layer off. And this is called a degree of milling, right? So most rices that you buy in the supermarket are going to go through that process as well. So I suppose it's going to be pretty hard to source that. But if you're looking at a cheap product, a cheaper rice product, it's probably going to go through that process. So what you're missing out on is a lot of vitamin B, which you can see here. And it's decreased in amino acids, which is not good. We need amino acids. Our body only processes a certain number of our amino acids. So it is like really important to make sure that we're getting them essential amino acids into our body. Right, so that's a really good one. Now, there was one last thing I wanted to talk about was the cooking process. The cooking process. Now, I suppose I haven't gone into too much of the food preparation just yet, but I will shortly. But I wanted to give you guys some education in regard to the background before I start talking about that. If you just joined, if you could put your sound on mute, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So, yep, so this study here was done by, this is another scholarly source that I researched. It talks about the trans-B-carnitine in vegetables, right? It's linked to the food matrix, which is incorporated, assume cooking can cause the bioavailability of disruption of the plant cells, right? Anything that we cook, the nutrition is going to be disrupted, right? If we're talking about plant-based like food. So if you're cooking anything from a vegetable or you put in any sort of heat through it, we're changing that cellular, okay, like nutrition, like which is not going to be as beneficial. So I wanted to talk about like this today because a lot of people say to me, okay, like food preparation, I don't have time to cook, right? If we're talking about like more like raw foods, right, it's going to be like more like beneficial. So I'm talking about example like salads and stuff like that. If you've been on like my nutrition plan, you know that I'm a big advocate of more plant-based raw foods as well, purely because of this like reason, right? It is really important that we're getting a lot more like nutrition. And if we're getting a lot more like nutrition from our foods, right, so we're going to be less hungry, right? So if we're not getting enough like nutrition, we're going to be like more hungry. The body is always craving like more nutrition, even though if we eat obviously a big amount, that might mean that nutrition is not as effective as something that is smaller, that is, example, uncooked. It's not frozen, it's not tinned, it's more like fresh. So that's some like really good information to take away. Now I'll go back to my presentation here. Bear with me for a sec, guys, sorry. Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about was obviously the preservatives, the colors, the dyes, all the additives. So we got animal drugs as well and pesticides. So a lot of packaged like foods or tinned foods have got preservatives to keep it from like rotting, right? It stops that oxidization process. So it needs a chemical to make it to last. So it's got a longer shelf life. If you look at a lot of your tin foods, your tin like vegetables, they can stay on the shelves for like years almost because it's got that chemicals. Now, I did have a look at another study as well. A lot of these chemicals say that they're harmless. Right? They're harmless to the human body. Well, yeah, I do believe that because that's what the study says. But if you can get a food that has not got a chemical compared to a food that's got a chemical, what do you think is going to be like best? I'm always going to choose the food that hasn't got the chemical. So that's just something to think about, right? One of the really, I suppose, like dangerous things that you've got in, I suppose, a lot of the additives in food is the like synthetic sweeteners, right? People still don't understand this. I still see people drinking, example, like Diet Cokes or diet drinks or diet foods. Anything that's got a like diet on a package, do not touch it. It's crap. It's got chemicals, it's got additives, right? So that's something that we have to be really cautious of. Now, I did a study a while back on aspartame. Aspartame, I think it's like 951 and 952 are the key numbers, right? Like these have been proven to cause cancers, right? And they obviously still say it's safe. So obviously we need to think about like what foods like we're putting in the body. Now, if I was to talk about organic foods, it's not always on people's radar to go, right, I'm going to eat only organic foods because it's not always, I suppose, accessible to get organic foods, especially if you're in a different country or if you're in a, I suppose, like rural type area, like where it is a lot tougher. But what you can do is work towards like getting some organic foods into your diet, right? For me, I'm not 100%, but I eat pretty close to organic foods. In Thailand, it's obviously a bit more difficult, but like when I'm in Australia, it's pretty much about 80 or 90% organic foods. So I'm working towards that, and obviously eliminating pesticides and herbicides, rodenticides, all that sort of stuff is like really, really important as well. And I just put that picture there of the cooking because, as I mentioned before, cooking the food like denatures the food as well. It takes away a lot of nutrition. Right, so well, how do we shop when we're so like busy? So this is a big thing, and I tell all my members, shop every 2 to 3 days, and they give me a blank look like, how can I do that? Seriously, it is not hard. How long does it take to stop off at the shop on the way home from work, run into the shop, spend 10 minutes in the shop and get a few bits and pieces to cook for dinner like that night? Seriously, another 10 minutes. It might be 15 or 20 minutes, obviously, out of your day. So the problem is, though, that our goals are not strong enough and we make these excuses in our heads that are like, we haven't got time. We're always searching for the easy way out, right? And that easy way out would be to stop off and grab something that is not as effective, that has not got as much like nutrition, right? Keeping in mind, I always say like fresh is best. It's life force from the food, right? The food example, if we're talking about plant-based, where's it grown? In the soil, right? So what's the soil? That is like the life force of the food in the soil, right? As soon as you pull that food out, it starts to oxidize straight away and it starts to lose like nutrition, right? So what like we need to do is get that life force, okay, like from that plant out the soil into our bodies as soon as possible. And that means, obviously, that means shopping every 2 to 3 days, right? Like for me, I'm generally at the shop every day, right? And it's, look, people say, oh, I don't have time. Like I said, that's just a bullshit excuse that you tell yourself that you haven't got time because your goals are not strong enough, right? Always go back to what your goals are and always think about like what you're working towards. Because like for me, obviously, like nutrition is not an option. I need to have good optimal like nutrition, because if I don't, I can't recover, I can't train as well. It's obviously a spiral. If the food is not good, then your training is not going to be good, your performance is not going to be good, your clarity is not going to be good. So there's so many things. And of course, if all that is not good, then like your results are not going to be good long term. Yeah, okay, in the short term, if you go out for dinner, say like 5 nights a week, it's not going to have a big effect. But in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years or 5 years, it will have a bigger effect, right? In like 5 years, that's when we can start to break down. Our immune system starts to get a lot lower. So fresh is always like best. So the best advice I can give you is stop the bullshit in your head. I don't have time, right? Like make time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, right? So we all spend too much time, obviously, on our phones, on Facebook, whatever. You know, cut that time out and go to the shop instead. But just like, don't tell yourself you don't have time. So if we can get to the shops, look, I'm not saying every day, every 2 to 3 days, get the fresh. The fresh is best, right? That's what we want. Avoid that packaged stuff, the frozen, the snap frozen vegetables and all that sort of stuff. Like I showed you in the studies, it's lost our like nutrition, the canned food, all that type of stuff. We want fresh as best. But look, some things, right, if they're not in season, sometimes we might have to go, but it's a last resort, right? So if we're super busy and if you don't have time to get to the shop, there's always other options, online services and stuff like that, right? So you can, if you're at work on your computer, you can order some food online and probably be at your home by the time you get home, right? So that's another great option to use as well. Okay, so I put together some of my quickest meals that you can put together. So I've got a raw zucchini carrot salad. right? That's a really good one. Seriously, like you could have that cooked in 5 minutes. All is like you need is some olive oil. Everyone's got that. You need a carrot, a zucchini, or 2 carrots or 2 zucchini, depends on your portion sizes. And obviously, if you just get some, of the olives or something like that, you can chuck that on top. If like you needed a protein, you could cook up some chicken or something like that. But for me, on certain days, I'll just have that. I'll just have a zucchini carrot for dinner, and that's it. Right? It depends on your training, volumes, what you're doing, all that sort of stuff. I know, but I'm generalizing just to give you guys some ideas of stuff that you can cook like really quickly. All right, so that's a good dinner. It could be a good lunch. I've got enzyme poached egg tomatoes as well. So that's another, obviously a simple one. Like mango smoothie is a real simple like one as well, and pumpkin soup. Now, it's what do we do with these? Now, the biggest problem I find is people go, okay, I don't have time for breakfast, right? That's another story that we tell themselves, like get up a bit earlier, cook yourself breakfast, or they go, oh, I can't cook at work, right? Another story, right? I know I said fresh is always like best, but like what you could do if you don't have time, what you do, you cook your breakfast in the morning, you make something extra at lunchtime to take like with you, right? That's like really, I think a good tip to think about. At dinner time, could be the same thing. Or if you don't think you've got time in the morning, you cook a bit of extra for dinner, you cook that for lunch, okay, like the next day. There's so many options that we can do in regard to food preparation. Now, I'm trying to get you guys away from obviously thinking about preparing like your food, okay, 5 or 7 days, obviously in advance. Everything that I've spoke about with all the studies and that sort of stuff, we start, like I see people that they prepare all their food on Sunday. It could be like 6 meals or 7 or more, right? The whole like freezer is jam-packed, like full of all their prep stuff. It could be like salmon, could be like veggies, chicken, rice, whatever. They put it in their containers, it's in the freezer. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't eat. I'm not a big fan. If I cook something that night, I won't like eat it to the next day. It's not fresh. It doesn't taste the same, right? So it doesn't taste like the same because we've lost nutrition, right? It started to oxidize, right? It started to rot. The food is starting to die, right? The life force in the food, our energy is coming from life force in that food. If you're tired and fatigued all the time, have a look at what food you're eating, right? Is the food like dead or is it fresh? Has it got the life force from the soil and like the nutrients? Or is it, I suppose, like starting to oxidize? Is it starting to die? So these are things we really have to think about. I got off track a little bit there. So where was I? So the preparation of the food is not always going to be in, right, that 5 to 7 hour day. I think all you guys that are on this presentation today aren't doing that, but there's still a lot of people out there. And if you are doing that, we have to change the mindset. It's a tough shift to make because our mind is telling us like we don't have time. Right? Like I said, it's an excuse that the subconscious mind is telling us. But you have to ask yourself as well, long term, am I going to get more like benefits from eating fresh foods? You probably aren't going to be too sure of that until you've tried it yourself. Okay, so like I said, I wouldn't eat anything either like the next day. It's always got to be fresh for me. So that's a really big thing to be thinking about. And these are some great ideas to save time. If you've been on my cooking shows or you jump on my YouTube channel, you'll see all my cooking shows. They're all 10 minutes or less, right? Nothing is ever over 10 minutes. I love cooking, but I wouldn't spend too much time in it. It's not fancy stuff. It's all simple stuff, right? Ever heard that saying, keep it simple, stupid? That's what we need to do. Keep it really simple. Because if we start spending too much time, it's not going to be consistent and it's not going to be sustainable, right? So we're going to get pretty sick of it pretty soon. But if we can slap something together in 10 minutes time, obviously it's going to be good nutrition. It's fresh. It's got lots of vitamins, got lots of obviously nutrition, and it's going to make us like feel good. So that is something really important. And a perfect example, if you know, I've been over here in Thailand, a lot of my food has been eating out. Still, it's been great foods. If you haven't seen my new website, check out Thailand's Tasty Foods on Facebook. I'm doing a lot of reviews on all the restaurants, stuff like that. So all the foods I'm eating is still great. But the last 2 nights, my training has been pretty high. So I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit more fatigued. I've been craving that fresh stuff that I cook at home by myself. So last night I cooked some chicken. I cooked the enzyme tomatoes, and I cooked up some brown rice. So, and I felt so much better. Right. So it does make a big difference. It might not if you're not aware of it, but as soon as you start to eat more fresh and the best, I suppose, quality of food, you start to notice it if you go back to anything that is outside of what you normally do. So just think about that. Okay. Have you guys got any questions? I wanted to keep this pretty short today. Have you guys got any questions or anything that you wanted to ask in regard to food prep, anything like that? Anything at all? I would love to hear it. I can hear your mouth, Mike, but I can't hear you. Just unmute yourself. Yeah, Mike, sorry, man. Are you there, Mike? Why can't I hear you? For some reason, Mike, I can't hear you. Sorry. Wait, just let me check something. Okay, have I got your mic? No. Okay, sorry, mate. I'll have to come back to you after this presentation. Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Has anyone else got any questions? No. Okay, cool. I'll come back to you, Mike. Definitely. Sorry about that, man. It's one thing I wanted you guys not to forget is check out the YouTube channel for all my cooking shows. Don't forget about your goals as well, right? Really important to reset those goals on a quarterly basis, right? And if you're interested in having a chat, if you're watching the replay, so what I'll do in this YouTube video, I'll post a link. You can click on that, and so we can personally chat about your goals. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope I've given you some great information, a little bit of insight into, I suppose, a different perspective. But most importantly, the takeaways is going to be fresh is best, right? You know, don't tell yourself that story that you haven't got time. End of the day, do your best you can. There's other, obviously, resources to get that fresh fruit and vegetables. And if you've got any other questions, please let me know. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next Friday, 2:30. Ciao for now.